Alright, good day everybody. Taking a quick look at the newly released Chinese main battle tanks in Cold War. Never seen anything from them before, and also because Cold War information has been released very sparingly so far, and the only thing we knew about the Chinese MBTs was just their names and their pictures. But in their infinite wisdom, Wargaming decided not to give us any information about their performance or any kind of numbers. So this is the first time we're taking a look at the Chinese MBTs in Cold War. So navigating over to the Eastern Alliance, we can see that Type 63I, which I assume is just a copy of PT-76, is free, so you have to play this. And what is this? 215 penetration, 220 damage. Then you have your premium penetration at 300, and then 43 millimeters of high explosive penetration. You have 1300 HP for light tank. It goes 64 kilometers an hour, so it's not too bad. So let's compare it to the PT-76. So actually, this seems to be like just a better PT-76. The PT-76 is just a garbage tank that everyone just hates, and I always just feel sad about seeing them being played. So it just seems to be faster than PT-76. Do a little bit more damage per shot while having a little bit less health. Let's get into more details. Upgrades. Standard radio upgrades. You go 74 kilometers an hour in the end, so that's not bad at all. You get a better turret, so you bump your health to 1500 health points. You get a pretty decent gun. No, standard shells are APCR, so hopefully they'll fly fast. Accuracy, not the greatest, but not the worst, 0.37, so you definitely don't want to be sniping at long range for this, if you can avoid it. And then you unlock the Type 59. Let's go into module viewer and detailed stats. Okay, so this is the stock configuration. Your shells fly 1,000 meters per second for APCR, so it's not the fastest APCR shell, but it's not the slowest, but it's definitely not incredibly fast. The gun seems like a Warfile upgrade for sure, but I don't know how much you want to spend time playing this thing. So some people would probably just research but not buy and just advance to the next tank. So, next tank, Type 59, Norinco. So, again, the closest competitor, it would be the T-54. We can see it has slightly higher stock health points while having slightly worse standard penetration. It goes about as fast as the Type 54 or T-54. Very comparable tanks otherwise, almost like they're carbon copies. Slightly more HE damage on the Chinese version. That's about it. Let's see, preview vehicle. Detailed stats. So stock DPM is not bad. You have 7 degrees of gun depression, which is really not bad. Does Type 54, T-54 have that? No, T-54 is 5, so even just stock, this seems like a more comfortable tank to play than stock like T-54. 1700 health stock, 1600 health on T54. So it's a little bit tankier with more gun depression. Armor wise, nothing to really write home about. You basically should play this like you have no armor. Your thickest point in a turret, 200mm turret cheeks near the gun, so people might snipe you there even. 195 at certain angles. Yeah, I can't say that this thing is armored. Um, yeah, this thing is definitely just don't get shot kind of tank. We still have our favorite fuel tank right at the front, so you'll get set on fire from any frontal penetration. And then there's ammo racks just below or behind the fuel tank, so it's great. While we're here, let's look at the gun stats. Our stock gun, APCR standard, heat, HE. But our ammo doesn't fly too fast. 920 meters a second, so it's actually, even though it's APCR, but it's slow. So not ideal. Our heat flies even slower. And our HE flies the slowest. Okay, Type 59 upgrades. What do we got? You get one set of track upgrades. You rotate pretty fast. Your gun. Interesting. Weird gun upgrade. You fire a lot faster, but it's way worse accuracy for better penetration. And you get standard. You replace your heat with another APCR shell. Really kind of poor penetration though. It's not like you're shooting really at anything in Era 1 where this thing is played at anything with huge armor numbers, but you will definitely bounce off things like Object 268 and maybe any other like kind of heavy tanks that come into the Era. This is weird upgrade. The accuracy is significant. Like the loss of accuracy is significant on this one. Your maximum health points go up to 1950. Your engine gets a little bit better. A little bit. Your turret gets a little bit better as well. And then you go into Type 69 to... Okay, so not too many upgrades, and in fact, it's... If I was playing this, and if I was just kind of trying to play to skip it, I would not bother buying any of these upgrades because they're very expensive. 2 million silver basically for more inaccurate gun. So these are all kind of, the gun is a questionable upgrade. I would almost even not bother with it. Almost. I'm not. Yeah, slightly better DPM, worse accuracy, better penetration. Not that much. Yeah. It's a weird upgrade. Very Cold War like upgrade where you just you for some reason sacrifice a lot of accuracy. Just yeah. And then we go into Type 69, and so you look at these. Type 59 is 3 million silver, 3.5 million silver, same as T54. Type 69, quick stats. It for some reason it has lower stock health points than Type 59. Weird. Way better base pen. So 276 is a great base penetration. As a top tier 1 tank, that's great. It's better than 165 or Object 165 even. But I'm not sure why it has like 100 less health points. That's a weird number. Compared to the closest competitor, again, comparing it directly to the 165, it basically almost a carbon copy, except for type 69-2 being 100 health less. View range is very comparable. They're almost as they're very comparable in terms of concealment. And actually, I remember Type 69 there being a light tank actually in Blitz and other tanks, other games. But this is it's a medium tank here. All right, so stock. Ooh, stock is -4 degrees gun depression, so that's really bad. Um, but then if you're looking kind of like just looking at the stats that pop out at me or jump out at me right away, I can see our shell speed is very fast. Our standard shells, our standard PCR is 1550 meters per second, so that's great for sniping. Looking at default stock accuracy. Okay, that depression is definitely not going to be a lot of fun. Does 165 have the same thing? 165 had a 6-degree gun depression, so yeah, it seems like Type 69 is going to be slightly less comfortable. It's actually a lot less comfortable. Accuracy is 1.37, so actually also gets worse a little bit. This one, I was excited about the great standard penetration, but then everything else just seems like a huge trade-off, and 40 degrees of gun depression really will make you question your desire to play this tank. Yeah, it just seems like a kind of sneaker. Let's see if upgrades make it better. What do we got in terms of upgrades? That's a weird progression. You get a better turret, so it increases your health. Or, sorry, not health. Yeah, so sorry, like correct. Health, you get better health. So you go up to 1850, which is pretty low. It's 100 lower than most top of Arrow 1. You get significantly better engine as an upgrade. And then right after the engine, you get to go to Era 2. So they're like, hey, you don't really need to play this to full research. You just move up to Era 2 if you want to. So it's almost like they know that this thing is a kind of a bummer, kind of a stinker. Very interesting. So what does the new gun give us? The new gun gives us better accuracy. And that's it. Ooh, this gun is barely an upgrade. 2 million silver for 0.002 meter like dispersion. That's a bad deal. That's a raw deal. Unless there's some sort of hidden stats, like it's hard to see if the new turret gives you better depression. See if we can kind of determine that somehow. Preview vehicle, module viewer. I guess we won't be able to see that compare module. Yeah, this the Type 69-2 is looking like a skip. It will be fast. It will be very, very fast. But it will be made out of paper, and then your Top Gun upgrade is not worth it at all. Unless it gives you better gun depression. So it's going to be hard to play, but it'll be fast. Um, okay, moving on to Type 79, bottom tier Era 2. So what we got? Um, just looks like a Type 59 with double fuel tanks. There's nothing really, or maybe these are smoke. No, probably fuel tanks. What do we got? Bottom tier Era 1, so we can see the damage is pretty good. So if we go back to the tech tree, sorry, I'm misclicking here. Looking at Type 62, actually, well, Era 2 Type 62 gets better damage per shot. Type 79 gets 460. It gets more health though, so comparing it to the closest competitor, T62, we have better standard penetration, slightly lower damage per shot, but we have super spicy HE shell. Holy, okay, 210, 570, and then T62 has 130, 630. But that 210 basically puts it in the same territory as the American HEP. Like so, things like M48 A5PI has really good 210 millimeters HEP. So this thing looks immediately interesting because you can start shooting HE out of it for greater damage. But the question is, what do you see that you can pen with 210? And the answer is not that much. So it does have slightly slower, slightly lower alpha compared to T62. And we only have the top tier, so we go from bottom tier Era 2 to top era of Era 2. So I would imagine there's a lot of upgrades for Type 79 because it has to basically compete and act as as two tanks instead of one. Because T72 is an incredible upgrade over T62. And now I wonder what we got just with Type 79 here. Okay, Type 79. We have pretty good DPM. Our APFS DS shells fly really fast, 1500 meters a second. We have no gun depression, 4, so that's tough. That's very tough. We have decent, not amazing stock accuracy at 3.5. Our horsepower ratio is pretty okay, but it's nothing to write home about. So again, if you look at our closest competitor T62, comparable to T62's horsepower, we have slightly better DPM than Type 79 out of the box. Slightly better, not by much. Slightly better penetration and more health. And we have better vision range as well than T62, but it's just, that's Cold War, it doesn't really matter. So we're in terms of upgrades. I expect a lot of upgrades. We get better engine, significantly better engine, so we'll be faster. We go up to 2,450 for our health. That's really not that good compared to because mid-tier T72 gets 2850. We go to 240, 2450. What do we got for armor? 100mm plate, lower and upper. That's not gonna stop anything. Turret. Front of turret is 185, so you'll basically be panned here. So turret, I guess cheeks next to the gun, 185, 200. Okay, yeah, you don't really have too much armor to speak of. Okay, so upgrades. We got faster engine, and I really wish we got better idea of the turret if it gives it better depression. Probably realistically, no. We get better view range, we get better health. Gun. Gun is an upgrade, an expensive one. So you get better rate of fire, you get more accurate, you still do the same damage, you get way better penetration at range. I would expect it to be way better. I would expect it definitely to be a way better penetration because, again, you have to play this thing, and then you'll be facing things like T-72, you'll be facing AVs and 4211s, and they have better. They just have way better penetration overall and way more damage, and your DPM doesn't even compare all that much. Yeah, this one, Type 79, seems like... At first I was excited about penetration for HE, but then... Yeah, it's tough. It's 4 degrees gun depression. Uh, that's gonna be really tough. Not that you have any armor to really try to hide yourself behind. This one is rough. 3,000 DPM, roughly, compared to 3,000 here as well. Oh, I didn't sell my T-72 actually, huh? Like looking at T-72 really quickly, like this one goes up to 3,500. Yeah, like you're basically playing your Type 79 just to be. You're always gonna be like a whipping boy, basically for everybody you see at a tier. It's gonna be rough. Rough. It's a rough tank. Type 80. Let's see if it gets any better because this one should look like a competitor. So we go straight to the top of Air 2. So the closest competitor, of course, is the AV, which everyone knows AV is incredible. AV gets rockets. AV gets pretty good ERA, explosive reactive armor. So right away we can say that our stock penetration on the Type 80 is better, but our stock premium penetration is way worse than the top, I guess, top package AV. We have no rockets, so we have HE with 230 millimeters of pen, so that's not great. And our alpha remains kind of low, on the low end, significantly lower than the Soviets by almost 100 health points and 90 health points, but we're still, I think you're gonna feel it a lot, definitely, that lack of alpha, especially if you're used to playing the T-72 AV. You're gonna definitely feel this. So what other things does it have? What's the gimmick here? 4 degrees gun depression. Very rough. The shells fly slightly slower than the previous tank, so 1455, so you lose 50 meters a second. Our DPM does not go up compared to the previous tank, so it's still 3174. Stock, which compared to top tier T-72, so top tier T-72 AV with all the upgrades. T-72 AV, all the upgrades. Yeah, we're gonna be basically a stock versus full upgrade T-22 AV, we're gonna get completely demolished in like a 1v1 fight so far. Okay. Sorry, like these menus are very hard to navigate smoothly between tanks. Again, so Type 80. So stock Type 80, we're gonna lose deep hand battle versus AV. Big time. AV will reload faster and they'll do more damage per shot to us. And we have no armor to speak of. That's really upsetting. We'll be a little bit faster, not by much. So our horsepower per ton is 1896. Horsepower per ton for AV. Let's see. 19.91, but again, this is fully upgraded. Boy. It's not looking good for Chinese tanks so far. They seem to be just worse, more uncomfortable, and no gimmicks. Like, there's no gimmicks, there's no extra armor, there's no speed, there's no nothing. It's just, they just seem plain worse. But let's see if maybe there's some hidden benefits that wargaming kind of put us for us. But so far, the common kind of themes that we see here is terrible gun depression, so -4, and like lack of armor and better center penetration is kind of the common themes that we've been seeing so far for Chinese MBTs. Okay, Type 80 upgrades. So first significant upgrade is the horsepower. You get 960 horsepower, which is pretty fast. You'll be going 70 kilometers an hour, almost. How fast is that compared to fully upgraded T-22 AV? So you will be faster than 72 AV. I mean, that's, I guess, the one thing. Your top speed is for AV at 60, but our Type 80 will, it seems like it will go almost 70 with fully upgraded engine. You almost go with 70, but you will have no armor and you will have no gun depression. Your turret, you get way less HP at full than the AV. So whereas AV is the MBT, this thing is still will be a medium tank. I don't know if it's still qualified. Yeah, it's still qualified as medium. So you get significantly less, you get 200 less health points, basically, compared to the AV. So it seems the AV is still the top dog of Era 2, then 4211, and then this thing will be a medium tank, so maybe we should be comparing it to something like M60, because I think this thing is supposed to be competing with M60, not with AV, because it really does lose to the AV. Armor, what do we got for armor? Is that the spaced armor up on our front? Because I see below the turquoise there's a other plate. So we have, looks like we have a pleak armor on the front. At 80mm sides. Okay, so we have a 120mm plate on top of okay, if I can understand this layout, on top of blue, and blue is the same as lower plate. Yeah, so it's hard to see, but it does light up. So under the 120mm plate we have 80mm hull, so our low plate is definitely a weak spot. But on top of 80mm we have another we have 120 millimeters, so we have 200 millimeter upper plate that may bound certain things. Our turret cupolas are weak spot. Okay, the log on the back is 220 millimeters. It's good to know. That's a thick log. The face of our turret is 250 millimeters. And given the penetration values of all the other tanks that we see, 432, you can probably be able to pan yourself in the turret. So if you see other Type 80s, just shoot the turret cheeks around the gun. Let's see. Yeah, not really about armor. So if you compare it to, for example, top M60, really 8.3. So we have better penetration standard than 8.3, well faster than the 8.3, while probably having less armor. So yeah, this thing is really competing with the 8.3s. And then I think this is the Era 3s where it gets interesting. So because you get a choice. You get a choice of, do you want to stick with the more mobile, nifty mobile, like medium tanks in Era 3? Do you want to be a Chinese Era 3 medium tank? Or do you want to switch up and become Chinese heavy tank? So everything we've seen so far is that Chinese Cold War tanks, Era 1, completely forgettable. Wish they didn't make you play them. They're very similar to their Soviet counterparts, just with less gun depression. Era 2, compared to the mediums, they're probably better. But even compared to the Soviet MBTs, AV still rules. Type 80, more comparable to M60, but it has less armor, less gun depression, but is faster. This is where it gets interesting. Where in the beginning, or once you're done with Type 80, you have to make a decision. Where do you want to go? Do you go into medium tank territory, or do you go into the heavy tank territory or MBT territory? Which is interesting because the Soviets, they're like, nope, we're MBT only, and their MBTs are very strong, probably the best tanks in the era, most comfortable, most armored. So really, let's see where this takes us. I didn't expect this. This is not something they really publicized. They didn't really tell you that in the Era 3 you have a pretty significant choice to make. Okay, so let's say we stick with the medium trees. So let's take we want to be a medium tank in Era 3, which is really not something that happens, because even the Americans, they all turn into medium tanks in Era 3. So it's medium tanks and light tanks in Era 3. And so do the British. They just go full MBT. So this is technically the first Era 3 high-end medium tank offering. So these are the first medium tanks in Era 3, which is weird because again, even in real world, everyone just kind of moved on to the MBT doctrine. The fact that we have tanks classified as medium tanks competing against fully fledged MBTs is very interesting. Very weird. Okay, Type 82. Type 88A. They all look the same. Like, I think if you're going for looks, these are not the most interesting tanks to look at. They're all more or less the same. So Type 88 at a glance, 460 alpha, so kind of carries over from the previous. Standard penetration good, 538. Better than Type 72B. So right away, this thing is more comfortable than Type 72B. just in terms of standard penetration. Premium penetration stock also great, 605. And premium also gets you a little bit better damage, surprisingly. But then T72B just has better damage, period. So it's kind of a trade-off. Oops. Kind of a trade-off. You get better standard penetration, but lower damage per shot. Still have HE, because it doesn't seem like you have rockets. 270mm on HE, so basically don't use it. Unless, like, carry maybe 2 or 3 for these, for HE. Might as well compare it to the heavy. What do we got on the MBT/heavy? So you have even better, standard penetration than the Type 85 2M, but you have lower damage. You have better vision, for what that's worth in Cold War, and you have 200 health points less. But this is where it becomes difficult, because you don't really have anything to compare Type 88 to in the era. There's no other medium tanks at the moment in Era 3. So they kind of have their own little niche. There's not even premium tanks in Era 3 that are mediums. So this is weird. These are weird, interesting tanks. Medium tanks in Era 3 at the peak of Cold War technology. So very good standard penetration. That's, yeah, better than 72B. Stock is better than stock 72B. As you can see, I haven't really gotten to the 72B yet. So just on paper, it looks better. Okay, let's get into more detailed stats. You have 4 degrees of gun depression, so I think that's kind of, again, you're always going to have to deal with that. So it's a medium tank with no armor. DPM is 4300 stock. How does that compare to the stock T72B? It's a little bit better, but even T72B stock has 60 degrees gun depression. And also the shells from T72B fly faster, 1760 meters per second. And then you go into Type 88, your shells fly 1500, which is good, not great, by the standards of Era 3. But you have pretty beastly DPM out of the gun, like 4300. You go 57 forward, so your top speed stock not great, comparable to Type 72B. Interesting. What are they? You don't have heat, so your heat, your premium APF SDS is just better. It just does more damage on average by a little bit, and it has better penetration. So if you're a spicy boy, you would just load full premium on this, because your pen is just better, while sacrificing nothing else. Better pen, better damage. Like, sure, it's only 20 points of damage per shot on average, but yeah, 48 shells. Your accuracy is good, 0.27. How does that compare to 72B? Accuracy, yeah, it's better than T72B stock. So this is an interesting. It's gonna be it's a comfortable medium tank, and it's This is the only medium tank in Era 3, and it's gonna be comfortable stock. In terms of shooting, you're not gonna likely to miss your shots, but you're gonna have trouble getting the shots because of your lack of gun depression. Let's see in terms of upgrades. Skipping right to the engine, you go fast. You go 65, 66 almost. How does it compare to the 72B upgrades? Okay, so he seems to be goes faster than you. Interesting. Interesting. Trying to figure this out. What is the point of this thing? Why would you want to play this over T72B? Okay, so our engine gets good, but not super good. Our gun gets more accurate. It seems like our shells, you do more damage all of a sudden. So, whereas your premium shells used to do 20 damage more, now your standard shells start to do 20 damage more. You get giga penetration. 600 penetration, top tier. Um, is that even something that... No, we got two guns, right? And we get two... Yeah, you get really good penetration stock out of this thing. So this will be a very comfortable gun platform, it seems, just for shooting standard rounds. So that upgrade seems interesting. You only get one upgrade. Yeah, this is a better gun. Interesting. And then your turret gets you to 3250 health points. It's very expensive. That gun upgrade is dirt cheap. It's like the cheapest gun upgrade I've ever seen in Cold War. 300,000 silver. Nothing. And then your turret upgrade gets incredibly expensive. 3,500. Ooh, this one is an interesting. This is an interesting alternative to running Soviet tanks, Soviet MBTs, or any other MBT really. It's an interesting alternative. Still not convinced why you want to have this. Four degrees gun depression is going to kill you. And relative lack of armor. We seems to have lost those like heat shields. Unless the turret, I wish we could see the turret. Maybe it gives us heat shields back. Seems like a very comfortable gun platform. Okay, Type 85I or 1, Type 85 1. So we keep. So we don't carry over the better gun from Type 88, it seems. Because we go back to doing 460 damage. We get 69 depressions on this, which is good. Our shells fly just as fast, still. Our DPM does not change much. So this is basically the same tank with just like better turret armor. Our DPM on stock 85 is worse somehow for some reason. Our shells fly just as fast. Our standard penetration remains the same as the stock 88. Man, this one is weird. It was starting to get interesting with Type 88, but this one just seems like worse. There's really no, again, we don't get heat or rockets. Upgrades Type 85. 3600 HP. You go up to 65 kilometers an hour, which is pretty slow. Every MBT goes faster than you. Pretty cheap upgrade though. This is not a cheap upgrade. Suspension module is not, and then you get the same gun you already unlocked on Type 88. So you have to buy the same gun twice. So upgrade, you buy this gun, Type 83I rifle gun, that gives you 480 damage with 600 pen, and then you have to buy the same gun 480, 600 penetration. You have to buy it again with no benefit. Doesn't even get that much better. So it's just the same tank. It's just the same kind of tank, but you have to do it again. Yeah, and you have to buy it all over again. Ooh, this doesn't make any sense. What? It's the same tank with better armor, but you have to research the same gun again. You get 2 degrees extra gun depression. So you're comparable to 72 BM. And the gun costs 4 million silver. Ooh, I don't know about this. It's started to get interesting, but then you just start comparing to other MBTs. There's nothing interesting about this one. It just seems like a waste of money. You don't even go faster. Like, you don't even go faster than your MBTs, things that you're going to be facing. Let's look at the armor. Lots of layers. So maybe this is where the point is. So our up, wait, hold on. Okay, so there's a purple layer on our upper plate, which is 35 millimeters. Okay. So then we have 120 millimeters on top of 35. And what's blue? I'm guessing there's like 80 millimeters, then there's 35, and then 120. What's the turret like? 320 millimeter roof of the turret, or like these little panels on top of the roof. 350. 360 millimeter plates on the face of the turret. 460. Okay, so we have 360 millimeter plates covered by 25 millimeter spaced armor on top of 360. So 375 millimeter turret face. Probably not gonna hold up to anything. Maybe. Big maybe. It is a small turret though. So yeah, it seems like you have a weird sandwich of armor up top. So there's 3 armor plates, so 120. I'm gonna guess 80 because it seems like on the overall armor viewer your front plate has 3 layers to it. So really you can only hope that your turret will maybe bounce something. But your hull likely not gonna do it. Okay, yeah, I can't see myself playing this at the moment. There's just no particular reason to do this. I would say this would be someone who's really bored of Era 3 playing MBTs and you just want to struggle a little bit. So this is a tank for you to struggle in and just be like perennial underdog against all the other MBTs. Weird. I think they had something interesting going here, but they completely lost track. These things are completely identical, and you have to research the same modules for it. You just get better gun depression and better turret, but you're just paying a lot of silver for the privilege of having that. So I'm not quite sure. I think they're missing something. Yeah, I can't recommend Chinese mediums, Era 3. Comfortable gun platform, but it's just there's no particular reason to play these at the moment. Maybe if we get some other quote-unquote medium tanks at the era, but right now it's very hard to see. Again, never played of these. This is just a quick look, just looking at paper stats and comparing to other things in the era. It just seems to be very hard to justify spending money and time, a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of XP getting these things. It's just I don't know what they really add. They're not even faster than things. They're not faster than MBTs. So medium tank, barely any armor, no alpha, not even higher DPM. So what's the point? What is the point of these things? Why do they make a separate tech 3 of these things? 4100 DPM. And then if we, I guess, upgrade this thing, you start, you fire, yeah, it's not gonna make it a lot of difference. 4100 DPM, 4300 DPM probably. And then you have BM, which has 4000 DPM. Shells fly faster. So basically they just have a little bit of an edge in DPM and base penetration. But then once you get to the BU, it's just slightly more DPM than the top tier Soviet MBT. Better view range. It's weird proposition. 6 degrees gun depression. Really weird. Okay, spent enough time talking about those. Let's go into the alternate tech, the options, the actual Chinese MBTs. I wish maybe they did a different icons for MBTs instead of heavy, so because heavies and MBTs are not the same thing. MBTs are more of a tank that can do everything, medium and heavy tank job. So maybe they needed like a different icon, but that's fine. Okay, so from tab 80, you go into tab 85 to M, and compared to tab 72, you have slightly more alpha and way higher center penetration stock. Same amount of health points, you're slightly slower. So you do more damage and you have better center penetration, which is great. Out of stock, that's what you want. 3700 DPM, your premium does more, well, has way more penetration and flies faster. So it seems like premium shells are what you want to be using on this one. Compared to the premium shells on T-72B, they're definitely better. Again, you don't have any rockets, so you don't have any cool gimmicks. Your gimmicks are, I guess, just more DPM and better standard penetration. That's the Chinese gimmicks, it seems. Your accuracy is okay, worse than the mediums, worse than the Soviet accuracy, and the same tier. Not by much, but it is worse. 6 gun depression, 6 degrees gun depression. So same as Soviet. This is the Soviet one. Obviously, you have a lot of explosive reactive armor, which increases your overall armor. And here, instead of ERA, I think maybe they just went with layered armor. So let's look at armor for this thing. Okay, no spaced armor, it seems. So you got 25mm side skirts. Okay, 45mm gun mantlet, if you can call it that. So you can really hit it in the gun and just pen it. 50mm upper plate. There's a section on the upper plate that's 50mm. I hope it's covered by something else. So then you have 70mm plate above probably that 50mm. So your layers start coming out. So 50mm, and then you have 70 behind all that space armor. Okay, so all the front of the turret is just space armor. Okay. Then you have 95mm plate on the front. Your lower plate is 130. Then you have 350mm slides, and then you have 360mm plate on the turret front, behind which there's 70. That's a weird one. Yeah, that weird plate, that weird 50mm plate is a definite weak spot. Actually, I'm not sure. I think maybe the whole hull is just the upper plate is a weak spot. It's a very extreme angle, but that particular plate, hard to say. Looks like the armor is okay. Let's look at the armor at the on the B. Oh yeah, the explosive reactive armor, lots of layers. It's a little bit better rounded. 170mm plate at extreme angle here. 410mm behind all the spaced armor. Yeah, I think you sacrifice some armor for higher damage and higher standard pen. Let's see at the upgrades. What are the upgrades here? We got better engine, 1000 horsepower. You go 65. You get better turret, 3550, 3450. What do we get for upgrades here? So B is going to be a little bit better. Comparable health points to the B. Man, these things are not definite. So you better standard gun, better damage than the B, while probably having worse armor. That's kind of the verdict here so far. Upgrades, you don't get any rockets, you don't get any other cool gimmicks. Your gun gets way better standard penetration added as an upgrade. And you get a little bit more accurate. So your gun gets even more comfortable compared to T-72Bs, and you have more options here. Yeah, so you basically worse armor but better center penetration, better premium penetration, better damage by a little bit. No rockets. Okay. Slightly worse top speed. I'm not sure if the trade-off is worth it so far. Okay. Type 85-3. So mid-tier Area 3 tank. It's going to be going up against things like M1A1 and T-72 BMs, and of course he'll see all three of these tanks as his opponents. So what do we got? We got the same alpha. So looking already at that, is that we have the same slightly higher alpha than the Soviets. 580 versus 550. Our top speed has seemed to be improved. Our penetration, our gun seems to have stayed the same. We still have 6 degrees down depression. We don't have a lot of shells, it seems. 42. How many shells does the Soviet have? 45. Okay, so we lose a few shells. Anything stand out to me? 580 alpha damage, 4000 DPM. Compared to BM, our competitor, comparable DPM. So honestly, not even that much of a difference. BM gets better standard gun penetration and better standard heat, or not heat, whatever, the premium round. So it seems like after we get to mid-tier of Area 3, we start kind of dropping off in quality. So our gimmicks kind of wear off. We still have slightly higher alpha, but our penetration is not great from stocks. Like stock penetration, not that great anymore. Even though we had that gimmick for about a second, for a couple of tanks we had better penetration, better alpha, and then we immediately lost it. So we lost the penetration angle because T72B M just has better center penetration. Better premium penetration as well. Okay, interesting choice. So TAP 85.3. What are the upgrades? Standard turret upgrade doesn't do much. More health. Where's the gun? Penetration 590, 550 at range. Same alpha, slightly better accuracy. Not that much more DPM. So I can't tell how much our premium penetration becomes. But it's definitely not going to be as good as the Soviet BM. Armor. So we got some ERA now, finally, on Type 85.3. See, it seems like it's more or less the same deal, just more ERA. ERA just acts as space armor. It's very thin space armor, so they're like, what, 28 millimeters? Good against heat. That nothing, almost nothing fires in the air. You still have that weird 50 millimeter plate. It's not covered by the ERA. Might be a huge weak spot just before the driver's vision port. Really weird. 95, so 130 millimeter lower plate with ERA. This is armor viewer. It just seems like even the T72BM lower plate is just better. There's just more layers to it. More layers means there's more. So 120 millimeters. But there's like a screen. There's a 20 millimeter. Yeah, there's a 20 millimeter plate all over the BM, which adds up. Which 85.3 doesn't have. It just has ERA and 130 millimeter lower plate. So I think on Chinese, the lower plate might actually be a weak spot, as opposed to the Soviets where it's not. Really weird. This is like an utterly forgettable tank. It seems. Just and compared to BM and even BU, I'm struggling to figure out what the hell is the point. Let's see, Type 90. So, final tank, the best tank the Chinese 3 has to offer us in Cold War. Comparison from the top on stock. It goes 10 kilometers an hour faster than BU. Has slightly higher alpha. Slightly worse penetration stock. No rockets. Six degrees out of depression. Our shells fly faster, both premium. 70-30. We lose a couple shells more. Again, our capacity is 39. So that's weird. We keep losing shells. Every tank we get, we just lose shells. So 39 shells is low. Yeah, the BU has 45 shells, and we're now even comparing to the Western Alliance tanks. So M1A2, how many shells does it carry? 50, so a lot. And then we got Challenger 2, and this carries Also 50 shells. So we're at a disadvantage if the game takes a long time. We may run out of ammo in a Chinese MBT Type 90. Okay. Weird. Weird, weird. Our shells fly fast, 1730 meters a second. Both premium and standard. Slightly faster than the Soviet ones, but not by much, so basically the same speed. Accuracy is fine, everything's fine. We go 70 kilometers an hour, so we have a good stock engine. Armor. Okay, we lost a lot of ERA for some reason. It just seems like Chinese gave up on the ERA idea, which makes the Soviet really OP in our tank in our game. So we have a 30mm spaced armor at the front, like a screen. So heat into the lower plate, not ideal, even though technically nobody has heat anymore. It has enough. It still has that weird 50mm plate where the driver's hatch is. It's not covered by anything. Really weird. This is weird. Weird armor layout. Okay, interesting. So there's a 70mm plate, and there's just a lot of spaced armor at the front. So that whole green part is fake. It's just an add-on. Oh, okay. So from the front, you just have endless amount of just fake spaced armor. Very fake space armor. So where the driver sits, there's just the tank just ends there. There's a 70mm plate, and then there's a huge, like fake nose for the Type 90, and that fake nose is very thick, covered space armor. Those are modules. So right behind the driver is the fuel tanks, but the enemy shells have to go through a lot of space armor at the front. So this whole front is like this. The shells will just get lost. They'll just get trapped in the. So there's a screen. So there's 30mm plus 170mm, 200mm. So there's just a fake box attached to the 70mm front plate, consisting of 200mm, 170. That is weird. That is so weird. This is either going to be super strong or it's just a gimmick that doesn't matter. I'm going to lean towards that so much spaced armor, so much thick spaced armor is going to stop all the shells to the front. But only time will tell. Our turret, however, 440mm at the front. Is there any layers? There's just it's 440, and then behind it it's another 70. So this whole tank is literally 70mm, and then there's a whole bunch of armor in front of it. 440. It's a super heavy front plate, and there's no actual like cupolas really. There's no, yeah, those vision ports. Maybe the commander's cupola on the left is a weak spot, but interesting. Just looking at the BU really quick. So we have 20mm ER8 at the front, 60mm plate behind it, 60mm plate covering 175mm plate, 430mm. So it says 90mm plate of the main armor of the turret, covered by 430 millimeters of like plate. And then Type 90 is 440 millimeter plate at the front of the turret, covering 70 millimeter base turret face. So it's very comparable. It's a little bit faster. Let's see if we're going to be super strong hull that eats everything and just shrugs it off, or people are just going to go through your front armor plate and they're going to just crit you in the fuel tanks. It's weird. And basically you don't want to give them your angle shots because they'll ignore that front armor plate. So if they shoot you like a track wheel at this angle, it'll just go straight into the tank through your tracks and into like your fuel tank, so you'll get on set on fire. It's a common issue with the Soviets as well. So you always should be facing your enemies kind of like head on to give them just your strongest part, but that's just common knowledge, I think, at this point. Real quick, upgrades. Not a lot of upgrades, which is good. This thing is going to be cheaper. Slightly better hull rotation. You don't have an engine upgrade, so your top engine upgrade is done. You get slightly better accuracy, slightly better rate of fire, no penetration increase. So you have worse penetration by higher alpha. Even though before we had better penetration, higher alpha, so we kind of lost our gimmick. But we're slightly faster. Slightly. Does BU get an upgrade from the engine? It does. But it's still going to be slower. So top tier BU might be just as fast with an upgrade. And it's a pretty cheap engine for the BU. BU has 2 gun choices as well. One with rockets, one without. This thing just has no rockets, faster out of the box, so you don't need an engine. Weird. Overall, just kind of summarize my initial thoughts on the paper. Type 63i, a slightly better PT-76, but considering how bad that thing is, that's not saying much. Utterly forgettable light tank. Type 59, slightly better than stock T-54, but not by much. Then we skip Era 2, Type 79 just seems like a worse T-62, even with the upgrades. Type 80, so compared to Types M60A3, because it's a medium tank, it cannot be compared to the MBTs. It's just a worse 72 AEV, and then the thing is just slightly worse than M60. It's a little bit faster than M60, but no armor to really speak of. And then we got the weird dilemma of which do you want to go Chinese mediums in the Era 3 when there's no other mediums in the Era, so you can't really compare them to anything. So when you're forced to compare the medium tanks of the Chinese Era 3 to the other tanks in the Era, they're just utterly worthless. They don't do anything interesting. They're just worse. They're just worse MBTs. So what is the point? I am not quite sure. MBTs go faster or just as fast. They do more damage and they do just as much DPM. So what is the point of these 2 tanks is hard to think of. They don't have better gun handling. They don't have more gun depression. What is the point of these 2 tanks is unknown. And then the Chinese MBTs are just kind of comparable to their Soviet counterparts. We start off being Slightly better stock, slightly better penetration and damage. But then, well, yeah, we kind of keep slightly higher alpha. Um, in exchange for less armor and no rockets. So we don't get any rockets. Um, so that's basically all there is to it. And we get maybe interesting armor layout in the end. But I don't know if it's more interesting than the BU. So you, in the end, do you want a slightly, potentially less armored BU that goes slightly faster? That's slightly more alpha, but comparable DPM. Like DPM difference is negligible. 4,000 here, 4,200 here. So slightly more DPM BU with potentially worse armor. Potentially better. Your HE is also not very interesting. 180 millimeters, 720 HP. So yeah, I don't know. Kind of a meh. These tanks are a meh. Type 90 is very old design, I think. You know, compared to Abrams A2 and BUs and whatnot, this seems like a very outdated tank. It looks old. It looks outdated. It looks old. Um, I wonder if they should have just got rid of these two tanks. Maybe put Type 88 as a top tier of Air 2. Just got rid of these two tanks and maybe added like a better top tier Air 3 tank with some gimmicks. Because I don't know, they having 30 extra alpha over your Soviet counterpart is not an interesting gimmick to me, especially considering how expensive these things are. Like I don't see anyone playing like if you already have the Soviets, switching to Chinese, you're not gonna feel much of a difference. I don't know. That's what is the point of this? So yeah, sorry for the rant. I thought this was been a quick view, but there's a lot of yeah, there's just a lot of things to look at when considering these things. But again, on paper, the Chinese Tech 3 for Cold War is weird. Weird, not very interesting, not very much worth it. Unless you're a super Cold War fanatic, unless you really love your Chinese tanks. Uh, the early tanks have no gun depression, and then you get just 6. And the Air 3. So how much do you want to deal with that? And you just have a gimmick of having slightly higher alpha than the Soviets. Well, that's gonna be it for now. If anyone starts playing these, let me know. I'm probably not gonna play these. I'm definitely not gonna free XP to the top tier to find out how good they are. I'm not sure. I don't see anything interesting about these things. Even just visually, these things are boring. Like, this looks badass and just high tech and cool, and there's just a lot more detail in this thing, just boring and lame. Even though surprisingly it's all like space armor at the front, but it's it's visually less interesting. Um, and especially less interesting compared to things like M2, A2, M1, A2, sorry. Visually less interesting than the Challenger. Challenger just looks awesome. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the point of the Chinese MBTs is. It just seems like tanks for the sake of having tanks in the Cold War 3. They're utterly forgettable. They don't have any gimmicks. Like the Soviets have armor, speed, and rockets. These things have just slightly better alpha. That is their only gimmick. And maybe some speed. There's just, yeah, not not too sure. Anyways, thank you for joining in. Uh, I'll Might be doing more of these eventually. I'm not too sure. This is my first kind of attempt at just waking up early morning, looking at the tanks the first day they added, the first hour they really been added, and trying to make sense of them and see what the point of them is. Hopefully you found this interesting. Let me know, and we'll see you around.